Radio Zero.
It's Radio Zero with Rick and Rose, July 2nd, 2021. And?
We're on Patreon, patreon.com/Radio Zero. We're live streaming sometimes, so on the Radio Zero Facebook, Poster Children Facebook, Poster Children YouTube, and also on Twitch at PCJCUSA. And also you can go to radiozero.us. All right, it's a bit of a weird week, day. We have a guest to talk a little bit with us today. We've got Andy Switzky, who was a founding member of the band Hum, who we've known for 35 years. Is that right, Andy?
Have we really only...
Something like that. Time flies.
So, I guess, so the reason why we're talking with Andy today, and we felt like yesterday we all found out, was it yesterday, that Brian St. Pierre, who was a drummer in the band Hum, passed away. And so Andy was a founder of that band and was there from day one. And maybe, Andy, you want to talk a little bit. I think these stories are intertwined. You want to talk a little bit about the first time you met Brian and how he came to be the drummer in your band?
Sure. So I can't remember if it was before practice or after practice, but I remember walking down the street and hearing like live drums. And then as I sometimes this happens. I mean, have you ever done that when you're like walking around and you hear some music and think, is it a record or is it live? And so you kind of walk towards it, and as it gets louder or you can say, oh, that's definitely live.
And is there a party there?
Drums playing.
Yeah. And you're like, is there a party there? Should I go in there? Am I missing something? I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
Well, so I walked towards the sound, and as I was getting closer, I could hear music underneath it. But it was obviously someone playing drums, and I kind of spotted the house. And I either went and got Matt, or we came back later or something, and we kind of ranged the door. And I think the first time we knocked on his door, and so we were like shy people, and it took some energy to go and like knock on a stranger's door. But I remember there, I say, does a drummer live here? And he said, yeah, but he's not here right now. So I think we left like contact information, and he must have like gone back to us, and then we brought him over to our practice space, and he was just blew everybody away. He was just one of the best drummers I'd ever heard play. And we were so loud that he just would hit the drums harder to kind of keep up with the volume in the room. And I'm kind of digressing from your question a little bit, but the limitation on how often we could practice was based on the condition of his hands, and when he'd wrap them with tape before he played, and then put more tape after. If a blister would pop, we'd have to wait 2 or 3 days before we could play again. and he was just such a hard hitter, and just always play with just so much energy. So that's how I met Brian.
So now you say you're a shy person. It was difficult to knock on a stranger's door, but the thing about you, Andy, is that's how I met you, is that you came by and knocked on my door at the dorm, and also that you always seem to be walking around town. So we're talking about
You're in my book.
Champaign Urbana,
Like,
right?
You're in my book more than Rick is, just for walking around and encountering people. Sorry, Rick, go on.
Well, no. So I think you're underselling yourself a little bit in that the fact that you were a connector in the town, in that you did seem to be wandering around a lot. I mean, what was that all about? Do you feel that that's an accurate representation?
Well, I mean, why I'd be wandering around?
Yeah.
I would. Well, let's see. I would be incredibly depressed and just this feeling of dissatisfaction and just needing to do something and having this energy, and just I needed to go on, like, walk around and go on these long walks, and I kind of would I guess when I would do that, I would kind of center myself, and then at a certain point, maybe I'd be ready to communicate with people, and sometimes it may have been moderated by external substances as well.
Yeah, I was not trying
like classes.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to trap you with that question. It's just a memory I have of you. I mean, the few times, like, I did not walk that much, but I do remember walking with you from the campus of U of I all the way, God forbid, to downtown Champaign, which at the time seemed like, well, it was like a mile away or something, but it was just oh my gosh.
Stuff like that. I used to like to explore. I always feel like you can't understand a place unless you walk around it, unless you physically move through it. And everybody just drives everywhere, and you don't get the experience of a place unless you really experience it without being moderated by
a vehicle.
A vehicle.
So okay. So you were wandering around. You heard. So the apocryphal, is that right? Story is that you heard someone playing along with Rush. Was that the case? Was that?
Tim Bowers is asking.
Well, I didn't know it was. I didn't know it was Rush at the time. Brian said it was Rush.
Right. So that's the thing, is that we have to kind of paint a picture of, and I think this is kind of important. I feel like the three of us were slightly of a. It's a very subtle generational shift where I was aware of Rush, but when I went to college. And I say this all the time. It's like I was really excited to go to college because I thought, oh, they're going to be a bunch of people now. Finally, I'm going to get to hang out with a bunch of people who like cool music.
Rush.
Instead of all these people who listen to Rush all the time, which was everyone in my high school, right? Yeah. You know, it's like whenever Rush played, Rush was huge in Chicago. I'm not sure. You're from DeKalb, right? Sycamore, I guess. But I'm sure the Rush, influence was huge there too, and it was just like whenever they play a show, everybody would have the shirts on in high school, and I'm like listening to punk rock and new wave, and I'm just like, ugh, why is everybody still listening to Rush? And I go to college, and I'm like really excited, and everyone's listening to Rush, and then except for Rose, and then you and your pals moved into the dorms the next year, and it was like, oh, okay, there's some people who like cool music also, right? As time went on, there were more and more people moving to campus that liked cool music. But to me, Rush almost symbolized the past, right? And so I don't know, did you have that? Were you kind of the same way at the time?
I didn't have any ill will towards Rush. I was aware of the music from things that they would play on the radio on like WLUP out of Chicago. I never bought a Rush album. A lot of the music that I was listening to, there was like Beatles, Rolling Stones, Kinks, Who, and then there was like Zeppelin, AC/DC, and then there was like all the hardcore punk, Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Minutemen, and then there's stuff like REM and some of the Devo, Talking Heads, Blondie. So all of that stuff was current, moving. I mean, so the last bands I mean were kind of like current, but also the near past. And there were music that I got into from like the rare times in high school. I did go and see some live bands. So I saw the Smiths and REM and the Violent Femmes, the Police at like Wrigley Field, where they had Ministry opening up for them.
Right.
Those are all things that I was into towards the end of high school. And
yeah, and so I think yeah, the Rush thing was kind of felt a little bit like the past. But what I realized is that, well, first off, in retrospect, yeah, I have no ill will towards Rush, and I enjoy some of their stuff. But also the fact that drummers just absolutely love Rush regardless of their kind of background. So punk rock drummers, they'll let it out that they love Rush also, right? It always comes out. And so there was that element. So why were you looking for a drummer? Didn't you? So the band already existed. Hum already existed when you just kind of ran across Brian.
Hum had maybe played one or two shows. I'm trying to remember now. And this guy who was this guy who was playing with us quit, and then Joe Futrell was playing bass, and then he switched over to drums temporarily, and then Matt switched over to bass. And I was still playing guitar. We never played out like that, but we practiced like that a little bit. And I'm like, well, we need somebody that just wasn't working. So we were looking. So that's why we were looking for a drummer.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's super in flux, and so Brian joins in, and I guess the question is. Again, my impression, this is sort of semi-external to all this happening, is that he was a pretty mainstream drummer, like Rush and things like that. Was not didn't have any, hadn't had any previous listening experience with like indie rock, punk rock, or anything like that. Is that correct?
Don't hold me to it. I think so, but he was still into the energy of the music, and I mean you have that you have that in the kind of music that he was listening to. I mean, that kind of the energy in Van Halen and Rush. That's still there, and he just heard the immediacy and the energy and the stuff that we were playing, and he just jumped in, and it was fun. It's fun to do that. I think the first show he played with us was like 2 or 3 weeks after he joined. And I think that was that show at Trino's that we played with you guys.
Huh.
and
I don't remember the specific show because every show, it's just one big giant continuous show in my mind. But
at Trinos?
At Trinos
well,
and Trinos.
It was videotape, but I think the videotape's been lost to time. I had a copy of it, and in the early aughts, I left it in my car along with this really cool Superman lunchbox. And someone broke the window and took the Superman lunchbox in my backpack, and that videotape was in my backpack, along with a CD copy of Fellatio.
Wow, man.
Score.
Yeah, whoever got that, I hope they. Yeah,
I hope
maybe
they
it'll
listened to the-
appear
to the
someday,
CD.
but no, it probably got.
Fellatio is the first.
Yeah, and so
First
I do remember that show, the Trino show, because that was the show for us. We were working on songs, Daisy Chain Reaction songs. Yeah, I do remember that show. At Trino's.
Yeah, remember the person, well, actually, it was Ruby Martin who videotaped that. And remember, she had to turn these lights on, and it was really uncomfortable with those lights on.
Yeah, it was hot. It was already hot, right? Was it hot?
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember that.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah, it was a summertime show. Okay, yeah,
And-
I do remember.
And I remember, so Brian wasn't there for any kind of sound check because he was working, and he was working as a phlebotomist part-time. And so he had on his scrubs, and he pretty much ran in and sat down the drums, and we started playing.
I totally remember that now. I remember the Scrubs. Holy cow. So that must have been the first time I saw him play with you guys. And the Scrubs, yeah. Wow, that is so weird.
He was just fantastic.
Yeah. But it's like I just went back 30 years and remember, like, have
Was
an
that
image
like the
of
little
him.
alcove and Trino's and we
It's
were
like that
yeah.
room.
Yeah.
They-
Okay. I remember that show.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great show. Oh, it's too bad the videotape is lost forever. No, it's...
Probably not. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, it's too bad you guys don't have a copy.
Yeah, maybe we do. I should look.
Well, it would be at the Sousa archives.
Maybe not. It might just be in the attic. Well, I always say that, and then I can't find
But
anything.
it had two songs from Hum and maybe 2 to 4 songs from you guys, and it was like a really early recording of both of those bands.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because I remember that one of our songs that maybe I do have a recording. I should look because I do feel like I've seen it or heard it because one of our songs didn't have a change yet in it. I remember thinking, wow,
Was it
this song-
Water?
Yeah, it didn't have the other chord yet.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I'll look around.
Oh, if you have a copy of that, I would love to have a dub, and I bet there'd be a lot of people really interested in it too.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of emails from Hum fans asking you for early stuff?
No, maybe once every 18 months.
Yeah.
I get someone like contacts me, and they might say, "Hey, are you the Andy Switsky?" Blah blah blah. And I say, "I might be." Yeah, but no, I don't want people asking me for things.
Okay, that's good.
I had someone asking for if he could borrow some masters because he wanted to digitize it and make things available. And I said, well, I don't feel comfortable unless I talk to the other guys about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's people trying to do an end run. Okay, so Brian joined the band, and then when did, so people who listen to the show may not realize, maybe they do know the early history of Hum, but also Balti, who later went on to be in Mother Menthol, was also in the band
That's what I
around
was-
that
yeah, I was
time.
trying to
What happened? Like what was that timeline? I don't remember any of the order of all this. I'd forgotten about Joe Futrell being in the band.
Oh, so Joe was playing bass before Brian joined Even, and I don't want to forget anyone, but we went through a couple of different bassists.
Oh yeah, there was another guy.
Yeah, who was also in Steak Daddy 6.
Oh, Rod.
Yeah, Rod played with us.
I
for a
forgot about
while.
that too. Yeah.
I think it was. I think the order was well. The first guy was this guy named Akis,
Yeah.
who was from Greece,
Yeah.
and then Joe,
Yeah.
and then Rod, and then Balti.
Yeah. And so that first record, the one we put out, the one called Filet Show, that had you and Balti and Matt and Brian. Yeah. So by the time you guys recorded, Brian and Balti were in the band. How did that go? What was that like? So that all this must have happened within a year, right? You guys wrote songs and then did a recording. Is that true? I should know this.
Well, so there was a demo that we recorded with Brian and with Joe on bass in Steve Albini's basement.
Wow.
And then before that, there were some just 4-track stuff that Matt and I recorded.
Mm-hmm.
That had the original drummer whose name escapes me.
And yeah, okay. So I mean, for what would you say? So, do you have some memories about Brian? You know, things that stick with you now. So, since this happened, I mean,
I'm just. So I mean, there's other people who spent a lot more time over many more years with Brian than I did, but it was in my life, and I think in Brian's life too, it was kind of like this really intense period because we kept in touch. The last time I quote unquote talked to him, it was like a chat. We would just chat every so often, and so like a couple years ago, he was on this podcast and talked about early days of Hum and talked about me. So then I reached out and was chatting with him then. And then it was back in 2019. It's funny, I still have these chats. So I was just like going back and looking at them. And back in 2019, he just like, I don't know, we were just chatting about stuff. How are we doing? How are you doing? Stuff. But so I mean, he was just this really great, fun guy to be around. Way back when we first met, the way he presented himself and came across is a lot different from who he really was. And he had a lot of depth to him. I read someone else was writing a quote that he called himself a man of science in the body of a gorilla. and I mean, he was a really, fair sized, very physical guy. And then he also had this sensitivity and intellect to him. And there's like a long period where I hadn't talked to him. I'm like 15 years or something. And then when every time that Hum would come through Central Texas, they would like let me know, and I'd like we'd hang out to some extent. And so on those occasions, I'd get a chance to talk with Brian about something, and we just had it's one of the things where you just have this familiarity and this friendship, and you might not have seen each other for years and years, but when you do, it's like it just picks up where it left off at, and I think that's due to sharing just this really crucial, energetic, important part of our lives together.
Yeah, that's the amazing
thing. Which is around like the early days.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about being in a band, playing shows, touring, all that kind of stuff is that, you you have these intense relationships and connections, but there can be these long gaps, and these 15-year, 20-year gaps. But it's just like, I mean, this is, diminishing the kind of thing. But, when you talk to people who are veterans and stuff like that, it's obviously a much more intense experience, but it's a similar experience where it's like you have these intense, sort of close, emotional, and it's not all positive, it's a roller coaster kind of experience, and you may not see each other for decades, but when you get back together, it's just like, there is that instantaneous connection and that familiarity. That's a really amazing thing. So that's great, and it's good to know. I was curious if you had gotten to talk to him recently, because I know you had talked to the other guys in the band, but I wasn't sure. Like, I don't think Brian was on that last full tour, right? He was. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if they went to Texas on that tour, but. Yeah. So you got to chat with him a bit.
Yeah. Every so often over the years, and then through social media, we would keep in touch.
Yeah, and I like what you said about him being deeper than he appeared. I mean, he seemed like my superficial initial encounters with him were just like, wow, this is a really normal person. Right? But then it's like you realize
how is he going to hang out with those guys?
Right, exactly.
How's he going to hang out with us?
He's super normal. He seems like a super normal person, but then you realize, well, no, he can't be, because he's a drummer, first off, right? And then he's got this music thing going on. But I think that's one thing you realize a lot of times with driven people, right, is that they might have that creative drive or that more sort of complex emotional life, but they spend a lot of time mediating it too. And I think that's what I realized, as I would talk to him, is that definitely it was just kind of like he has this veneer of being a normal guy, right? And then it was like, oh, okay, there's a lot more going on here than that.
Yeah, I think when we first met, I mean, I had hair down my back and stuff, and I think he used to emphasize. He came across as like a normal frat guy, and I think he used to emphasize that to see if it would provoke me. It's kind of a way of teasing me.
Right. That's funny. I am so happy that you mentioned the thing about him showing up at the show in the Scrubs, because that all of a sudden just kind of locked him in my mind, right? Where it was like, yeah, I knew Brian and we played shows together and everything like that, but that, like, to me, that encapsulates almost everything, is like running up and just kind of locking in and playing in those Scrubs. And it was just like, what is going on here? It was like, and for me, that was like, and you talking about that idea of a man of science in a gorilla's body or something, I think those were great contradictions, but that's also what made him a great drummer, right? Is the kind of power in there, and the energy, but there was some level of kind of control also.
Balti wrote this piece about Brian on Facebook, which is fantastic. Well written, right? Just very right on. Just about how much drive he had to continue to improve, and he was always going at 100%. Yeah,
definitely. And yeah, it was that kind of situation, with our band, where we've been lucky with great drummers, but it was kind of like, oh crap, this guy's this is a really great drummer too. It was like, oh, where'd they find this guy? But yeah, it was because you, Andy, would walk around, Someone like me, I'd just stay in my room with my guitar.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, being depressed and then being, going out and walking around, because that's probably a good way to deal with depression instead of just sitting in your bed and stewing about it.
Well, no, I mean, you could say writing songs is a good way to deal with it too.
Oh yeah. Maybe I wasn't talking about you. I was
Okay,
talking
I'm not
about
taking
myself.
It per se. All right, Andy. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
Sure.
We need to talk to you not on a live stream with other people listening. We need to have a private conversation in the near future. But
Sure.
be safe. You're in Texas during the 4th of July? Is there any danger?
Oh yeah.
Do you stay inside?
Well, there's always a certain degree of danger in Texas. It's an open carry state, and you just kind of like learn not to do things. Like, you do not go on someone else's property. And you just need to show a certain level of common politeness, because you don't know if the other guy's packing, and he probably is.
Right. Yeah. You just assume that there are weapons.
Yeah.
Or anything, and don't trespass. Take care of yourself. And we'll.
Well, I'll do my best.
All right, and thanks for talking to us about this today.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I finally saw how the sausage is made. I mean, your wider audience would just really be surprised at what a large, all-encompassing corporate endeavor this whole thing is. The contracts I had to sign. I mean, my cousin's a lawyer, and luckily I could run them by him. I had to pull in a favor, so he'll probably want a website in exchange or something. But I was really impressed.
Yeah, just remember we own you now.
All right. Well,
all right, Andy.
Y'all have a great day.
Yeah,
You too. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was great.
Yeah. Well, you have a fancy on the phone Andy Switzky.
I do.
tab
I
on.
figured out how
It's
to
really
make
cool.
a lower third,
Yeah.
And-
So
but I've just turned it off.
So
now.
Danny Ingram says that Hum, like Poster Children, also did some shows with Swerve Driver, but after his time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
Gonna read all the comments here. Tim Bowers says greetings from Nowhere Special, and rest in peace,
He's
Brian.
Starting to hide. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's Stephen Williams' birthday today. Happy birthday, Stephen William. And Danny Ingram also says that Jay Robbins is down in his basement teaching his kid Pro Tools right now.
Oh,
So
man.
he's telling him saying hello from us.
Our kid
That's better.
is we're not a Pro Tools family here. What has our kid gone through? Fruity Loops, whatever that's called in the 21st century, and
FL Studio or something,
FL
right?
Studio
Yeah.
and Ableton. There was some Ableton, but I think we're back to FL Studio, which are both programs I don't use. I've used Ableton and have taught a class in Ableton, but it's not my usual program. But yeah, definitely Pro Tools, man.
Why aren't we teaching Pro Tools?
I don't want to get into
that's right.
my sound design avid rant. Well, basically, I think they had, at least in the the 80s and 90s, they had a very predatory marketing strategy, tying software and hardware and kind of locking you into systems that were very expensive. So for an independent musician who recorded digitally, it was not the best platform, because you were you'd have to make a $5,000, $10,000 commitment every couple of years to keep up to date, which is why I was an early Logic user. Actually, what's his name? His name I just blanked on. Wow, it's who, mixed and then recorded two of our records. who
Bryce.
Thank you,
John-
Bryce.
Bryce. John.
Bryce Goggin
Okay.
was a used
Okay.
Logic, and so he was a professional, and used Logic, and so I was like, okay, I'll use Logic if I don't have to use Pro Tools, and he'd move stuff over to Pro Tools at the end. So that was
Danny wants to make sure that we know that he's not into Pro Tools.
Yeah.
At this point, and it's just saying hi to Jay.
Yeah, no,
Robbins.
I know.
Hello,
I know,
Jay.
I know. It's
Tell-
just any excuse for me to start railing on Pro Tools is. Yeah, so the Brian thing, it's I don't know what to say. I mean, he was a great guy. He was a great drummer. We don't know a lot what happened
Yeah, we
about
don't
what
know what
happened.
happened.
So don't ask us. But
I was asking. I was like, "What happened?"
Yeah.
And then you were like, "What the fuck is the matter with you?" And I was like, "I want to know."
yeah.
Because they're kids. There's. I'm responsible.
Be honest. When someone at that age dies, no matter what happened, it's to me it's a terrible thing.
Yes,
right?
it's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing, and there's no real. It's devastating, and it really makes you think. I mean, we talked about it. It's been a while now, but losing Angie Heaton
Yeah.
recently, and Nick Rudd. It's starting. And actually talking to John Moore about some of the, after, I don't think we were talking about it on air, just talking about some of the people in the Chicago scene that have passed away recently. It's realizing that not only the power of these communities, and like Andy was talking about, is like you have these bonds that you make, and even if you haven't seen someone for 15 years, there's still that bond, and the fact that these times and being part of these communities were so important to all of us and changed our lives. And then when someone passes away, it's tough, because you realize that you feel like, oh, this is a permanent, important thing in your life. And then you realize, oh, it's going to disappear too. It definitely resonates. Makes you think.
What have you decided to do differently now from this, or what? How has this? I mean, I decided not to sleep. That's what I did. Well, my body decided.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, things are a little different for you, I think. I mean, I lost my dad 13 years ago. It's right around the 13th anniversary. And I think when that happens, when you lose a parent, or maybe somebody's lost a sibling, that's really where it kind of, I think that was when I dealt with a lot of this. And so but the transition from starting to lose people who you knew when you were younger, people you grew up with, people you became adults with, right? That is a different thing. And so maybe I'm still in denial about it, although it's hard to be in denial, like I said, because it seems to be, obviously time is marching on. So what am I doing differently? I think I do what I always do. So Andy talks about going for a walk, right? And I never thought, that's really something that's interesting to me, because in my mind, Andy was always this, super positive, social, connected person who made all these connections, right? It's how I met all the people. Well, not how I met you, but then how I met the rest of the people we were in music with, and I was in music with in college before you joined the band, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I mean, he was the connection there, and for all of you who are Hum fans, he's the connection that made, obviously, and so what am I saying? Oh, the fact that that's sort of born from dealing with depression or stress or anxiety or whatever you want to call it now, right? That was his reaction. My reaction is to work on stuff, or to bury myself in creative work and everything like that. And I'm sure, that was the same for Andy too, and for you. But for me, it's definitely that. So what happens this past week also, not to equate it to someone's death, but we had flooding, over the weekend. We had a 100-year or a 500-year event here in town where our basement filled up with 6 inches of water. Luckily, I had remembered that we had gotten a little bit of water in the basement before, so that's where my whole studio is. And so I've spent the past week cleaning that out, and I didn't have any devastating financial impact, but it definitely made me think about, I've got a lot of shit, and I've got 35 years of shit, right? My music life represented by physical things, and that idea of possibly losing it all and thinking about, well, what's important and everything like that. And so what's helped me is, spending a lot of time with a wet vac. It sounds stupid, and drying out floor tiles or carpet tiles and making sure, the guitar I had, since high school is okay, and all that kind of stuff. It's part of that is, that's how I've been dealing with all this stuff, is to just, I don't know. And then I watch Rockford Files and The Price is Right with Bob Barker. That helps me too. Those are the things that help me. So
That's
I know.
good.
I hope you have something to help you through rough times.
Yeah.
I should say my family and everything like that. That's the thing, is I have a safe space. I mean, that's the worst thing, is when your house floods, and realizing that too, is that my home and my family, those are my sort of security blankets, and I have those things. A lot of people don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have that. And so traumatic things can happen, but as I have my kids and my wife, my partner, my life partner, and everything like that. And so that's what helps me survive. And so I hope everybody's doing okay.
I just have this image this week of you had taken you have this large blue tarp, and when the sun finally came out again here, you took all the floor tiles, and the floor tiles were all like, as you said, you have 35 years of stuff. And you had like just all the floor tiles out in the backyard, and there was this bunny that's been all through our backyard. Like, this bunny lives in our backyard and is probably eating my vegetables. But this bunny just kind of hopped over and was just staring at these floor tiles, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that bunny is thinking about all those floor tiles, because that was where the bunny wanted to go sit in the sun. But the floor tiles were there. And he was like, what the fuck is the matter with these human beings? Like, what do they need these floor tiles for?
And it's the worst, because when it was really raining and I'm like doing my circuit around the house to make sure the gutters are still on the house, every time I went outside, that bunny would get driven out of the bushes. I would scare the bunny, and so I feel bad for that rabbit, our yard rabbit, because again, our world, me having to check the gutters and everything like that, made that poor bunny run out into this pouring rain, out of safety. 3 times it happened. It happened 3 times when I walked out. It was just like,
Man.
This poor rabbit. And
Bunny.
This is weird, but what was it, 2 nights ago or whatever, before Brian passed away, I watched this movie that I watched as a kid, and they just remade it a couple years ago, called Going in Style, with Art Carney and George Burns and Lee Strasberg. And it's about these elderly men who rob a bank, but that's not what the movie's about. The movie's about, so there are 3 guys, and they don't have anybody anymore but each other. And I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a spoiler alert, but by the end, only one of them is alive, right? And it's really about how getting older is about being alone, and about losing people, right? And so that, I guess I was already thinking about that kind of stuff, where it's just kind of like, wow, this is kind of the future, right? It's like, either you're going to be the one who goes, or you're going to be the one who's left, right? There's only two pathways out of this. It's really, really deep. I guess, for a late 70s, bank robbery movie. But yeah. What else? What else happened? On a happy, and that's the thing. And so the other frustrating thing is not to get political and seem superficial again, but Donald Rumsfeld passing away. We're also realizing that some people just get away with it, right? And that's the thing is I'm going back and remembering this Errol Morris documentary where he interviews Donald Rumsfeld, and people really hated it, I think. And it's a painful documentary to watch because the McNamara one where he talks about being wrong about Vietnam and the regrets and the person who tried to push him off a ferry because of the anti-war thing, like he literally, someone tried to kill him, Robert McNamara, because of what was going on in Vietnam. It had a profound effect on him, and he seemed like a repentant person who felt the weight of his decisions and his systems that he helped build, the systems, sort of this post-war decision-making, sort of numbers-based system. Not even post-war, it's just kind of like World War II, just, that kind of modern idea, the world that was built that's kind of parodied in Catch-22, right? Robert McNamara had regrets, whereas Donald Rumsfeld, the documentary with him is you don't get any resolution. You just kind of disappear into this man's mind and the way he builds more and more complex knots and puzzles to explain and to rationalize, right? And to me, that's more devastating, is realizing that, I always have the hope that these people, it was like that. It's why, for instance, when Trump was elected and people are saying, oh, he's going to change and it's like, no, his whole world has been built around not changing and changing the world to fit and make his world better, right? It's nothing to do with accepting or all of a sudden realizing what you've done is wrong or has hurt people, and realizing that there are plenty of people in power, and a lot of power is impervious to this and doesn't ever, have regrets. It's the downfall, or you could say is the hollow core of something like Citizen Kane, where it's like, oh, he has regrets. He's sad about his sled, and he's lived a life of pain. And it's like watching this Donald Rumsfeld documentary. It's like, no, some of these people don't ever come to any kind of moment of, justice or realization or acceptance that they've done irreversible or horrible harm, right? And maybe people aren't even capable of understanding that. And so, I'm sorry, I'm getting dark and depressing. So
What?
yeah, it's like, what do I do to make it through this? I don't know what I do. I guess I bury myself in work. And then, you got your Bill Cosby. Yeah, it's just like, I'm a little apocalyptic right now, and the heat,
heat in Portland,
in the Northwest.
That freaks you out a little bit.
Yeah,
You're like, what if this is the end?
What if it's this is just the turning point, and it's like, okay,
you mean
so
like Bill Cosby is the turning point?
no,
Okay, but
no,
you mean the environment,
the
What if
flooding
this is it? Yeah.
that we had and the heat,
Yeah.
and it's and thinking about it, and in my mind it was like, well, what am I going to do? Is like I'm gonna move all my gear out of the basement and into the attic, and then I'm gonna get the air conditioning set up and do that and everything like that. And I realized, like it's a vicious cycle. As I was leaving Menards with a bunch of plastic stuff because I can't have wooden, I guess I could have wooden pallets and wooden crates to keep some stuff up in the air, so when I get another inch or two of water in the basement, it doesn't get damaged, But thinking about the plastic I bought and thinking about, oh yeah, it'll get hotter, and then we'll use the air conditioning more, which just is part of the problem, is the very thing that's going to make this problem worse. And it's just like realizing that I am feeling a little helpless that it's a vicious cycle, right? That in order to deal with all of this that's going on, like the heat, for instance. It's like you're going to use the air conditioning twice as much, right?
You're going to use the air conditioning twice as much.
Well,
But
by
people
human,
will be,
all of
yeah,
us, right?
human,
That's how
yeah.
we're going to survive, right?
Yeah,
Because you're going to die, right? If the temperature doesn't go down overnight, that's when people start dying. So that's what happens. Is that's the breaking point.
Well,
humans,
they got to start building houses with windows and
right.
airflow
Well,
and stuff.
humans can survive pretty bad temperatures. What they can't survive is sustained bad temperatures, right? So if it's like the sun goes down and the temperature doesn't drop enough for you to cool down, that's when bad things start happening. And so what are you going to do? You're going to be cranking the air conditioning, and then that's just going to feed into this cycle. And that bummed me out a bit.
Joe Chrisman says Rick is available for children's parties, by the way. And Sean Wilkinson says hard not to get overwhelmed with everything right now.
Exactly. And so what I'm thinking about is the positive, right? So how to think in terms of positive things, and so what's positive change, and that's the thing is I think we've had such a like emphasis on individual change, right? Individual responsibility and everything like that, and we have to really start working collectively to fix things. But I don't know how to do that, and I don't know who's going to do that, but we've got to sort of band together and make sure that we don't just burn ourselves to a crisp.
So you were talking about you led a design thinking workshop over this, or you facilitated a design thinking workshop over the past
a breakout group. I didn't
a breakout group.
facilitate the
Okay,
workshop,
like
yeah.
do you want to talk about like do you see can design thinking help?
I do have hope just because it's a platform for conversation. So one thing I came out of these things is that a lot of times the way we solve problems is a survey, which you could also say is voting, right? So it's just kind of like asking people what they think and getting some data, or the opposite is having an open discussion, right? Which is people just talking. And I don't think either of those work, actually. I think those are both
so having
useless.
the survey is the voting, and then the talking is kind of like the
open discussion,
like
open
the
forum.
school, like
Yeah.
the school board meeting.
School board meeting.
Okay.
And so what the one thing I like about design thinking is it's a process that gives people an opportunity to talk and also talk to other people about problems and their experiences. And so I think that's important. And so that's what we used to have, I think. And I think in some way that's what a representative democracy is supposed to be, right? You're supposed to talk to your constituents, and then those representatives are supposed to talk to each other, and then you're supposed to come to a consensus, right? It's this hierarchy. And I think we've lost that. Obviously, we've lost that. Our representatives aren't really, their constituency is not the people.
Well, okay.
The people,
so
it's
right.
the profiteers, right? And so they're representational of the power structure now, not of the society as a whole, right? So having different methods of allowing people to talk to each other, to get to know each other, and then to come to talk about problems in a way that's not just accusatory, but
we have this wonderful internet thing here that we could be using for it, but unfortunately anger has been monetized, and division has been monetized. So once we figure out our way around that, I feel like once we, like every time I have Paul Boyev, my token Republican friend, comes on and says something racist on my Facebook page, and then people get really mad and say you should block him. But and I think it's, I haven't done it yet because I don't know. He was also in the music scene, right? He's also in the music scene. And so he was, his quote, at war with us. You were joking. But so he came from the same experience as us, yet he's saying these things that are totally opposite of what we believe. But we need to listen to him because those people are voting also, and those people are going to stop our people from voting and stuff like that. So I mean, you need to understand. This is like you need to walk around, like Andy talks about.
And I worry that sometimes the listening thing is slightly off, right? You don't necessarily need yeah, everyone doesn't need a voice, right? Doesn't need to be heard all the time, right? They need to be heard, and we need to make sure that all voices are heard, right?
Well,
But
people need to know how to express themselves.
Yeah.
You know, so like just even listening to Bag Boy talk about what was going on at the school meetings, and you know what Becky Swan or whatever that woman's name was saying, and the fact that she's not from here, but just listening to how people argue, even, you know,
Yeah.
and like having sort of a critically thought out process of like, okay, well, what you're doing now with the argument that you're making right now has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And okay, yeah, Kay Paul was friends with Brian in high school. Andy is saying, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Cody B here says, I always think of Poster Children in Hum as like brother and sister. I guess we would be the sister since I have breasts. Like Flaming Lips and Mercury Rev, relatives. So the connection between us and Hum is yeah, we grew up in the same town, and we loved them so much that we put out their first 2 records, right? You don't ever really talk about that. Like, you don't want to boast about that, but we put out the first CD, Filet Show, and the second CD, Electra 2000,
and a single.
and a single. Yeah. So, do you remember? Do you want to talk about that at all? Do you want to talk about like why that was the first record we put out, right?
I think so.
Filet
Yeah.
Show is 12-inch records #1.
Yeah, it was.
And it's filet, as in a fish.
Yeah.
And then show, like to play a show. So it's not the dirty word. Do you remember, like, you heard them and you were like, we have to take our money and buy CDs from this, send it out to people.
No. Well, we were roommates with Andy, and so we knew of the band. Actually, one of Matt's friends helped finance it also, but we wanted to start a label. My original intent was 10-inch records. I wanted to just put out 10-inch vinyl, like EPs, kind of what our first record was on 12-inch vinyl, but it was 8 songs, and I thought, I just love 10-inch records. But in 1990, was that 1990, 91? Vinyl was over. Everybody wanted to put out CDs, and then I think we did cassettes also. And so it wound up being that. So it was a little more complicated than that, but yeah, definitely it was like, well, that was the next thing you did, right? So we had put out records on independent labels. I think we were moving to a major at the time. Maybe not. Maybe we weren't yet. I can't remember. Again, it would have been around the same time.
Yeah, we were moving to I think we were. Oh yeah, actually, you'd have to figure it out.
What you did is in your scene is, and Parasol at the time wasn't putting out those type of bands yet. They were still putting out the pop stuff. Mud hadn't started yet, and so it was just kind of like, well, so that's what you do next is you put out other bands' records.
Right. So
that was just the next thing you were supposed to do.
So they recorded by themselves, right? They paid for their recording, and then we just pressed up.
They
their
recorded
CDs.
with Kent Weitzel.
Yeah, and we pressed up their CDs, and it was 2 colors. And one of the colors didn't work out, right?
Yeah.
One of the colors ended up to be magenta instead of red.
Yeah.
And they were probably not happy about that.
Well,
but that was the
that's indie rock, man.
Yeah,
indie label.
That was the
fun.
That was the first record, and then they record Electra 2000 with who?
Brad Wood.
Okay. All right. And then we put that out.
I believe we paid for that.
Yeah.
I think we did. Yeah, and I think we paid for the Love Cup record. I can't remember, but I think we paid for those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
took them on tour with us.
Yeah. We did what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And
then they grew from there.
Yeah.
They decided to sign to RCA, and they had their great, RCA re-put out Electra 2000, right?
Not to sound pretentious or anything like that, but it's a familiar pattern. So I think of it as the Throwing Muses Pixies pattern. So the Throwing Muses were kind of the band from that had gotten onto 4AD, and then they brought the demo of the band that they really liked, which was the Pixies that they had played with. Well, they were basically from the same town because Providence and Boston were so close, right? But it's like the MC5 Stooges thing. There's this kind of pattern in local scenes where you have, the sort of conjoined bands that have, early connected history.
And then Jeff was in our band.
Yeah. Jeff plays guitar on Daisy Chain Reaction. He's the guitarist on Daisy Chain Reaction.
And then there's crossover from Hum to
like Balti was in.
Yeah.
For those, I'm sure there are a lot of people who know Menthol and Mother.
But before that, there was Bad Flannel.
Right, all that stuff. Yeah, all those
Steak
connections.
Daddy 6 and
Yeah, we put out Steak Daddy 6 records, so yeah, I'd forgotten that Rod was in an early version of Hum, and he was the guitar player, one of the guitar players in Steak Daddy 6. And this is where it could just go on. On and on.
And then there was, I was when you guys were talking about just remember, this was our time, this is our music and stuff, and I just have this memory of standing and watching the Digits, play and just thinking, like, 20 years later, 30 years later, whatever. And just thinking, that's my music. That was even though it's about getting high, and I don't do that. Like, that's still my music. I know somebody else who's getting high. Like, yeah, I'm gonna listen and sing to that. Oh, they're playing that song. Awesome. It's everybody's music is special to them. Music is so important. So yeah. All right. What else do you have?
I think we're done. This is so we're gonna have we recorded it. It's gonna be interesting once you see. We recorded an interview with a great guest. Almost a week and a half ago. But I have it in the can. Rose is going on vacation, so next week there won't be a live stream. I will publish this interview. Definitely tune in. It's great, and the interviewer, the subject is amazing. Has a lot of connections to stuff we've been talking about today and previously, but also just really interesting, fascinating.
The person who we've interviewed for next week?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm excited for that. I'm going to edit it in the next few days and have it ready for you all next Friday. So check the inner tubes for that. And then we'll live stream again in a few weeks. All right.
2 weeks. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, stay well.
Walk around.